Testing, testing. Okay, I think that we're all set. Just gotta get the setup right. Let me send an announcement. Hello, hello. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful morning. Should you learn physics in middle school if you're homeschooled? Um, I don't know. I don't remember middle school well enough to remember if like I had like a physics class or if it was just like science. I feel like it may have just been science. So yeah, I don't know actually. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't know what the best way to do that is, but if you're watching on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever you're doing, make sure to like the live and send it out to as many people as you can, so then we can get more people in here and I can answer more questions. Um, could you explain the concept of gradient descent? So gradient descent is uh, a numerical method to solving complicated problems. And essentially what gradient descent is it tells you if you have some function that depends on all of the parameters that you're trying to like optimize, gradient descent tells you what direction your parameter is changing the fastest in. Can you explain what inertial mass is versus gravitational mass? So inertial mass is how hard it is to move something. Gravitational mass is how much gravity something produces. What are gravistars? Gravistars are a hypothetical or theoretical explanation for what's going on with black holes. The idea is that they're actually just very, very slowly collapsing and rebounding, and the reason it's slow is because of time dilation. Do you believe in God? Do you think belief in God is directly antithetical to physics? No, not necessarily. Do you have any book recommendations for learning physics? Perhaps not for learning physics besides textbooks, but if you haven't read it already, A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking is the GOAT. It is the GOAT popular science book, or is the GOAT popular science or popular physics book, in my view. Boogosphere heralds the Olmec's return. Okay, thoughts on spin launch? It is very unlikely to get people to space. You will die. This guy's ChatGPT IRL. Okay. If the observable universe is slowing, could the unobservable universe be collapsing? The observable universe is still accelerating. It's just that the acceleration is decreasing. Is it worth it to get a physics PhD? If you love physics, you should do it. Are you open to the existence of extraterrestrial beings? Absolutely, but I don't think they visited. Um, does semiconductor physics in 5 to 7 nanometers worth trying to understand? If you want to get into semiconductor physics, sure. It's not something I'm particularly interested in. What are your views on quantum non-locality? I prefer quantum non-reality. I think locality is pretty important. Have you already discussed Rogan's climate fail with Bernie? No, I haven't, and I probably won't. It's not like my field of expertise. Is time only real from our perspective? Well, it depends on what you mean by time. It depends on what you mean by real, right? Do you know about unstoppable force versus immovable object? Yeah, that's not a science question. Um, what are your thoughts on the recent theory might be in a black hole? Go watch my video from like yesterday, and I talked exactly about that. Why does a cavitation bubble make light? It's actually still not super well understood. But the basic idea is that you have really, really hot gases that are produced because you're compressing air down to a very, very small size. And that produces light. That's the idea. It's a phenomenon called Bremsstrahlung. I do have a video from a while ago that you can go watch about that. It's about shrimpoluminescence. What do you think of engineers? They're fine. They do good and important work. What is your exact research field? I do relativity. So if it involves relativity, if it involves geometry, I'm interested. Origin of consciousness or universe? Well, I don't think that those are the same thing. The universe, who knows what the origin is? Maybe there wasn't an origin, maybe it's always existed. Consciousness, again, outside my field. By the way, I forgot to mention, Grimlock with the $15. Thank you for always answering my dumb questions. Of course, Grimlock. W Grimlock. And remember, that was on Cash App. If you want your question answered first, ASAP, a donation will convince me to do that. So Cash App or a super chat on YouTube. Those are the easiest ways for me to see your message ASAP and for me to want to answer your question ASAP. So just a heads up for those of you who have burning questions. Why did she leave me? Ask a psychic, not a physicist. There are ET, will the language barrier be the biggest obstacle of communication is sought? I suspect not. It'll be the delays that'll be really hard. Do you study black holes since you study relativity? Yep, I actually just submitted a paper about black holes to the best physics journal, literally 10 minutes ago. How did you become a physicist? Well, I went to college and then I went to grad school and I got a PhD. Do you do research in gravitational waves? No, I don't. I don't do gravitational waves. I like, not really. Okay, this person's spamming. Is this one really live this time? They're always live. There's just a delay on YouTube. I want to be in astrophysics, but the 12 years I have to go to school, should I do it still? If you want to be. Why doesn't geometric interpretation work well in QFT? It does. It does. QFT is a geometric theory. Do you have ResearchGate? I don't know. There are probably things of mine that are on ResearchGate, but I don't post there. I bring up Rogan because it's a gigantic piece of misinformation that needs to be addressed. Well, maybe tag environmental science creators. That's probably worth doing. Like I could, but it's outside of my lane, if you will. Einstein's synchronization convention implicitly allows light to be instant on the way back. Well, no. So the point is if you take Einstein's convention, then it's not instant on the way back. If you take some other convention, then you can make it instant on the way back. But then it's really inhomogeneous and it's very confusing and surprising. How do I conduct my own research? I'm an undergrad physics student who wants to get involved. Well, you won't be doing it on your own. You'll be doing it with an advisor, with a faculty member or a postdoc or a grad student. So go talk to people that are doing things that you find interesting. Do you work in academia? Currently, I am an affiliate researcher, but I'm between contracts essentially. So I'm still affiliated with the university, but my paid contract ended at the end of April, and I'm looking for a new one now. How much do you get paid? Well, currently, my income is TikTok and TikTok alone, and YouTube, and so on. But I'm looking for another position at another university because my old contract ended. Can you exceed the speed of light? No, almost certainly not. Do you debate people on climate? So look, I debate people on climate because I know more about it than the average person, but I'd feel bad making a video about climate because I try to keep my videos as close to an expert's opinion as they can be. So like I separate the content of the lives from the content of the videos, and I do that intentionally. How can I'm about to start my undergraduate. How can I publish a good paper in 1 year? I have knowledge till the third year of undergrad. Why do you need a publication in your first year? You don't need that. As a physicist, can you comment on mental health and emotional control? No, that's not my field. What? Why? Is time an illusion due to relativistic theory? It's not an illusion. It's just another dimension. What's your favorite physics topic to learn about? It's got to be cosmology. Is superposition a real physical state or just a representation of what we know? That depends on your preferred interpretation of quantum mechanics. I take it to be a real physical state, but that's an interpretation. And that interpretation, to answer ontology or something's question, is the many worlds interpretation. Where can you read any of my papers? You can't, because I don't tell you my real name. Do you practice math to keep up with fundamentals? No, because math is part of my day job, so I don't need to practice. I just do it. How did you meet Ian? On TikTok. Have you talked to Darth Dawkins? Yes. Is there a difference in dark matter and energy, or are they the same thing? No, they're distinct things. They just have similar names. How does gravitational potential work if gravity isn't a force but warping space, and the effect doesn't reach zero, so it lowers from one body and increases at another? So gravitational potential is an approximation that we use when doing classical mechanics, essentially. It's an approximation of Einstein's general relativity. In general relativity, there is no gravitational potential. There's just space-time curvature. Are you a sophist? I don't think so. Why is there a spider on my shoulder? There's not some spider. It's a diagram. May I ask a few questions on the beginning of the universe? Yeah, but you probably won't get much answer beyond this is all that we know. What interpretation of... Oh, I already answered that. If gravity is just curvature of space-time, not force that pulls, why object can't just stop? Well, so objects move through space and time, right? And the point is the path that they take through space and time is dictated by the shape of space and time. That's it. How far do you think we're close to harnessing nuclear energy? That I can't. I don't know. I'd like it to be well, you mean nuclear fusion. I'd like it to be 15 years, but maybe it's a long way off. Is Kerbal Space Program accurate? It's surprisingly so, yeah. Are you interested in nonlinear dynamics? Not really. How long till everything is... Oh, where do rights come from? Who knows? Ask a philosopher. Do you know anything about the Yang-Baxter equation? No, I've never heard of it. Did you like the movie Interstellar? I did, but I cringed a little bit at the very end. What advice would you give to someone who's bad at solving problems in physics, how to improve in solving problems? Go to office hours and practice. Is there any difference between Big Bang singularity and black hole singularity? Yes, if you take the singularities as actually existing, which I don't, but supposing that you do, the Big Bang singularity is a past space-like singularity, meaning that it occurs at a moment in time. The non-rotating black hole singularity is a future space-like singularity, meaning it occurs at a future point in space, and there's no moments of time. There's no moments of time after that, or sorry, a future point in time, meaning that there's no moments after that. On the other hand, the singularity in a rotating black hole is a time-like singularity, meaning that it's more akin to a place rather than a time. This is a question in electrical physics. If we moved few electrons to a wire, would it change its resistance? So you're saying if the wire were charged, would its resistance change? I suppose it might, yeah. No time symmetry, so energy isn't conserved. Right. What are your thoughts on considering time as 3 dimensions? I haven't looked at the paper yet. How old were you when you got your PhD? I was 29, or I think I was just about to turn 29. You're a fan of the Big Bang TV show? I like it. I at least the first few seasons were good. What do you think the end of the universe will be based on your experience? I don't know if there will be an end of the universe. I'm pretty agnostic about this. If the universe is a black hole, does that mean the multiverse is just in layers of black holes? That would be one implication, yeah. Or one, one thing that you might infer from that. What's time in quantum physics, and how could it be another dimension in 2D and also 1D? Also, there is time. I don't know what that question means. Blitz doesn't know that the Big Bang is fake. Well, I guess not, because I know that it's not fake. How did you know you wanted to become a physicist? Well, I saw drawings of black holes and I thought they were cool. Is it true that observing something changes how it acts? No. No, it's a matter, I mean, if you take the standard interpretation of quantum mechanics, it's a matter of interacting with the thing, not observing the thing. Thoughts on how brain cosmology intersects with the cyclic model? There is a brain cosmology that is like kind of sort of cyclic, but it's not the same kind of thing. What topic should one study to get better at understanding light and the way it behaves? Look into electromagnetism. Thoughts on the sidereal time and its effects? What effects? Like it's sidereal. There's sidereal time and then there's solar time, right? These are just two different ways of keeping track of time. We generally like our year is based on the sidereal day. That's it. Sir, please tell me how to get proper knowledge of an electronic circuit, how circuit current works in a circuit. Please tell me something. There are a lot of YouTube creators that will give you introductions, but really just like this is an engineering course thing. So if you want to learn this properly, then go take an engineering course in electrical engineering. Is space-time the area that matter affects in space? Space-time is the kind of the stage in which matter lives. How many maths predicted black holes existed even before it was proven by... Well, we didn't know that black holes existed until the 80s, even though they were predicted to exist in 1917 or something. Are there any jobs in physics outside academia? How much classical mechanics do you do nowadays? Not really. There are not many. They'll be closer to engineering positions, and I don't really do classical mechanics nowadays. If you don't know what space is, how can you extrapolate redshift equals Big Bang? What do you mean if we don't know what space is? Space is, like, in the model, space is just, a hypersurface in a manifold. Are we in a simulation? I suspect not. How semiconductors work in electronics? Which type of work... I don't know what that question means. Which type of work we take from it. Do you need a high IQ to learn general relativity in the required math? I don't know. I don't know what the required IQs are for various things. Does matter with negative energy density exist? Seems to be no, but maybe. We just don't have any evidence of it. What is one current accepted theory do you find you're most skeptical of? The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, I guess. Do you think the multiverse is real? I kind of lean towards no. Sorry. Could our universe be in a black hole? Go watch my video from yesterday. What is 10 to the 80? It's 10. It's one with, 80 zeros behind it. Any thoughts on Carlo Rovelli's pop science books? I haven't read them. Economics. Any promising gigs on the horizon? Nope. Job postings slow down over the summer. A perfect cyclical universe, no beginning, no ending, possible. I'm currently working on a paper that's trying to prove that it's at least in principle possible. I want to publish something because I want to aim for top schools for your PhD. Nobody's going to expect, unless you're graduating in your second year, nobody's going to expect that you have publications as a freshman. Why don't we see a lot of scientists making new formula and discovery like in the previous century? We do, you just don't hear about it. Is teleparallel gravity verified experimentally? Teleparallel gravity is in some sense equivalent to general relativity. It's just another description of it. So yeah, I guess, in a sense. What do you think about all the TikTok lives that talk about the Earth being flat? They are lost sheep, if you will. What is there still be learned about gravity? Well, lots of stuff. Like, what are black holes about? What is the universe doing? Why do galaxies be like that? There's a lot. Why do you lean towards the many worlds in theory? Well, it seems like it's kind of like the ontologically minimal explanation. Like, if you just take quantum mechanics seriously, then there is an object called a wave function, and when you interact with that wave function, entanglement happens. And that's essentially what the many worlds theory says is true. Is string theory really slowly falling out of fashion, or is Eric Weinstein untrustworthy? Eric Weinstein is untrustworthy. String theory is still one of the biggest areas of like high energy or of like theoretical physics. How do you like the Hartle-Hawking no boundary? Well, it probably doesn't apply to our universe, but that idea I think is very, very strong, and I think it could very well, that a similar idea could apply to our universe. Was college hard? I didn't find it so hard. Does it lower the credibility to a scientist if they believe in God? Not necessarily. Why are moved clocks tick slower? So that's an interesting question. Essentially, it boils down from it comes down to the fact that the speed of light in a vacuum is always the same, regardless of who's measuring it. And so in order for that to be the case, it must be the case that time slows down, that clocks tick slower if you're moving fast. But a good way to interpret this is just think of space-time. You always move at the same rate through space-time. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. What are your thoughts on gravistars? They're neat, but we have no evidence that supports them as far as I know. I haven't read any papers by Professor Douglas Goch. How'd you get into mathematical physics? Did you start with a math background? So I did a bachelor's in both mathematics and in physics. So I had a background in both, but I've always been more math-oriented than experimentally oriented. Do you think you could get the top grade in an English GCSE paper, physics paper? I don't know. I've never taken it. Nectu. Ah, yes, mod controls. Yes, Nectu, thank you. You've been added as a moderator. Thank you, Nectu. And thank you for the $5. By the way, if you guys don't know, if you want a question answered urgently and first, super chats are a good way to get that. Good way to encourage me to answer your question first. What do you do in your everyday job? Well, currently, I am an unemployed physicist, if you will. Well, no, I mean, more seriously, when I was under contract, which ended at the end of April, I spent basically 7 to 8 hours a day trying to solve problems on various papers, in meetings with people, during collaborations, doing calculations, sometimes writing for a paper that we're working on, things like that. What's my favorite particle? I'm fond of the Higgs. I'm also fond of electrons. What's your Mandela effect perspective? It's psychology, not physics. There we go. What's your opinion about aliens? Do you think they exist? Will we have contact? I think they exist. I suspect we won't have contact. If not now, and perhaps not ever. Have you read the recent paper on CMB by Gero and Krupe? No, I don't read every paper. I can't read every paper. How is it even possible for a fourth spatial dimension to exist? How can there be anything orthogonal to 3D? Well, that's a you problem. If you were a two-dimensional being, you might have trouble imagining a third spatial dimension, but that doesn't mean that it can't in principle exist. Opinions on ChatGPT reviews on peer-reviewed papers. It's real bad. It's real bad. Do you think humanity can survive the death of our sun? I don't think it'll still be humanity, but I think our descendants will. The symmetry argument is more about we have to take it as a postulate for these postulates to work. Oh, okay, that's not a question. Can you be good at physics if you're bad at math, and how can you improve your math if you struggle with math your whole entire life? I failed high school specifically because I couldn't pass it. Unfortunately, being good... So this would be like asking, can you be an expert on... Can you be an expert on... I don't know. Can you be a biblical scholar while not speaking any ancient languages? And the answer is basically no, because the language of physics is mathematics. If you're struggling with your mathematics and you want to improve, I don't know how to, as an adult, I don't know how to fix that besides just practicing. It is a skill, but I understand that's just saying, just practice more, you'll get better. I understand that that's not satisfying. Is it possible to harness electricity over distance from the air? Yeah, sure, with microwaves. Use a microwave laser. Yeah, don't forget to like the live stream, y'all. If you're watching on TikTok or on YouTube, like the live stream. Get this sent out to more people. What's the right way to learn physics? Chronological order of the stuff you learn, mindset. The right way to learn physics is to... Well, I don't know. This is a pedagogy question, but like I found myself successful in a traditional university environment. I don't know what's successful for, like, they're going to be different for different people, right? Thoughts on Carl Sagan? Did he influence you at all? Carl Sagan is the GOAT, but honestly, people like Brian Greene influenced me more. Just because I was a little bit too young for Carl Sagan. A little bit too young. Does the fabric of space become thin as it spreads? Will it spontaneously create wormholes? No, so it doesn't have like a thickness or a thinness. It's not like literally a fabric, right? How can we trust mathematics when it was created by a human? I mean, you trust machines, and machines were created by humans, right? Just said that because... can you explain the idea that justifies the Einstein field equations by postulating that the time derivative of the volume of a sphere of particles depends on the momentum flow? It's an interesting way to derive the Einstein field equations. And essentially it comes from... I think that you need a little bit more than the time derivative of the volume of the sphere. You need something like the stretchiness of the sphere. Once you get that, though, then you can just direct... Because the Ricci tensor tells you how volumes change in different directions. And the Ricci tensor is related to the stress energy tensor. So that's roughly the idea. I haven't seen the one where the time derivative of the volume of the sphere can derive the EFEs, though. From Abamail, I'm going to butcher this, Abamail Gomez with the $5, thank you. Is grad school in physics worth it in the current environment of cutting Pell Grants and assistance? That's a really hard question that I don't know the answer to. I would have said, last year I would have said, if you love physics, go to grad school. Like, then you get to do more physics, right? I don't know if... I don't know how likely people are to get to get accepted into grad programs. I don't know how much grad programs will be able to fund students. I know that at least prior to this year, almost all physics grad students in PhD programs were fully funded. Almost all of them. There were some that didn't, but almost all of them. I don't know what it'll be like going forward. I really don't. And I'm sorry that that's the reality of the world we live in, Abamail. Would you like to go on Star Talk? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Why not cut out the middleman and get a math PhD? Because I already have a physics PhD. Tim for Paley with the $10. Thank you. Is this somewhat accurate, if not a bit simplistic? Time like GeoD6 equals inside the light cone, space like GeoD6 outside the light cone, light like GeoD6 on the boundary of the light cone. No, that's not only simplistic, that's exactly what they are. It's just not all paths that are inside the light cone are GeoD6. GeoD6 are only specific paths, right? But yeah, that's exactly what they are. Books or videos for Physics 101 for Dummies. Physics 101 for Dummies? I don't know. But read this book, A Brief History of Time. If you're interested in the kind of physics that I like, black holes and the Big Bang and space and stuff, this book. Attacking Harvard is not a good sign for smart people. That's it. That's exactly it. Um, People with dyslexia are dyslexics, or people with dyscalculia just referred to as dyscalculic. I don't know. How does the black hole information paradox challenge unitarity, and what are the key implications of proposed resolutions like black hole complementarity, firewalls, and ER equals EPR? So the black hole information paradox is this idea that, well, okay, let's back up. So in quantum mechanics, you have wave functions, and the wave functions are supposed to evolve deterministically. The process by the mathematical description of the way they evolve is via unitary operators, meaning that in some sense, if the probability of if the total probability is 100% before, then it stays 100%. Now, if you have a wave function that passes by a black hole, some of that wave function might leak into the black hole. And the idea is that the black hole information paradox, the idea is that if some of that probability leaks into the black hole, that's just gone. And somehow you're losing probability, which is very weird. And more specifically, what this means is that, stuff entering a black hole is a non-unitary transformation. Quantum stuff entering black holes is a non-unitary transformation. And so you have various resolutions that kind of fix unitarity. I'm not familiar with all of the resolutions. But the resolution I am familiar with is just that the Hawking radiation carries the information back out. That's my, and so you just have unitary transformations both inside and outside. So if you look at the late time behavior, there is a unitary transformation going from before it falls into the black hole and outside to after it falls into the black hole, but after it's been re-emitted and also outside. And there would be a unitary transformation there. For you, how should governments define outer space? It doesn't matter, right? Your thoughts on the apple in a box theory? As long as the box remains a finite size, yes, it is true that there's this phenomenon called Poincare recursion, where if you have some matter configuration if you have some matter configuration with sufficient energy, and you just and it's in a finite volume, finite pressure, all these things, and you just leave it there, eventually it will reach all possible configurations that are energetically allowed. This is called Poincare recursion, and it's just true. It's like mathematically true. Isn't simulation theory just a bigger infinity than base reality, not the biggest? Simulation theory is like just a shower thought. What uni did you graduate from? I'm not telling. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? I don't. If energy is conserved, is creation ex nihilo possible? I guess, but maybe it wouldn't be creation. How does nuclear weapon work? How do they get all that energy in a small weapon? Yeah, so the idea is, what bombs are is you have something that has a lot of stored potential energy, and then you convert that potential energy to kinetic energy very quickly. That's what a bomb is, right? So a chemical bomb, the energy is stored in chemical bonds. So you have bonds that when you break them, the molecules fly apart quickly. Basically, they're just barely held together and they want to fly apart. So they would have a lot of stored kinetic energy. Nuclear bombs are similar. And the important point is that the amount of chemical, so from E equals mc squared, you can kind of establish how much energy is stored in a bond compared to the mass of the system. So you can calculate the energy stored in a bond and compare it to how much mass the system has. And what you'll find is that chemical bonds have very, very, very little energy compared to their mass. Like a millionth of a percent or something like this. And so you need a lot of mass to get a decent amount of energy out. On the other hand, nuclear weapons, they use, instead of chemical bonds, they use nuclear bonds. So the bonds between protons and neutrons in an atom's nucleus. And that has more potential energy. And so by breaking those bonds, you get a much bigger kind of energy to mass ratio out. And so you just require less mass to get bigger bombs. That's the basic gist. So they can be overall smaller. Can you fix the toilet or light in your house? I guess it depends on the issue. Like in general, yeah. But it depends on like how broken things are. Like if I have to actually like rewire some stuff, like I don't have the tools for that. Like I know how to. Like I when I was in college, like I sold a circuit design to a production company. So like I know my way around electronics. And slightly less so around sanitation infrastructure, but I know how they work. Is Hawking radiation the stuff that fell into the black hole or stuff redirected before the event horizon? No, it's this. In principle, it's something like the stuff that fell into the black hole. Um, is it feasible to send a probe to Europa and get a definitive answer whether life exists there? I guess, yeah. Send a probe with people in it, and then have them look around for life, right? Why do X-rays bend forward when entering glass, assuming visible light bends backwards? I don't know what you mean by forwards and backwards. What's more likely in your opinion, that the universe is headed to heat death or big crunch? I think that heat death is, well, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on that. But heat death doesn't necessarily mean that the universe hasn't always existed either. There are other models that involve heat death as well. Or maybe not heat death, but like big rip type things. Some advice on getting started on the physics of radiation shielding? I have no idea. I don't know anything about it. I just know that you need stuff to put between you and it. Sci-fi is a hell of a drug. I guess, yeah. Is space-time a fundamental entity or an emergent phenomenon arising from more primitive quantum degrees of freedom? We don't know. I kind of lean towards it being emergent, but I have no idea how that might work. Was it a bad move for the Cardassians to join the Dominion? I mean, yeah, of course. Do you think the universe is truly infinite, or do you think that it is finite but massive? It seems likely that it's infinite. At least that's where the data goes. There was a guy on the YouTube chat who wrote in regular letters, "Are you Jewish?" And then I didn't read it, and then he wrote in all caps, "Are you Jewish?" Like, dude was really, really insistent. How have the discoveries from James Webb changed the convos in physics? I mean, it's changed like galaxy formation physics, people, but not much more than that. I'm a physics major from Virginia Tech. I'm doing a BA instead of a BS. Will employers consider me? A BA is worth less than a BS in physics. That's absolutely true. Although employers, they probably won't care. Well, industry employers, I don't think that they'll care. As a physicist, can you explain your scope of expertise so people know more of what kind of questions to ask? Look, so the research I do is relativity and differential geometry. However, I have a master's in physics. That's one of the requirements of getting a PhD, right? And part of that means is that you've taken all of like the kind of like foundational grad level courses. So like I've taken string theory, I've taken quantum field theory, I've taken quantum mechanics, I've taken general relativity, well, actually those are just the things I've taken. So in principle, you could, I guess, ask me about condensed matter physics, and I wouldn't know much about that. But like the kind of like fundamental stuff, I can answer questions about, no problem. Do you agree that infinite is size term, therefore there is more than infinite? I don't know. That doesn't really mean much. Is it too late to learn advanced physics at 16? No, you're in high school. What? Higher formula is just made up. It's all made up to begin with, right? So do they just make stuff up and make it fit? Well, sorta. Like kinda sorta. Is fine-tuning considered evidence for design by a significant fraction of physicists? No, actually. There was a poll recently, and it was like 6% of people of physicists who were polled think that it indicates design. All caps and repeating your question is a good way to get muted. All caps and spamming your question, I should say. Do you believe in a creator? I don't. Why quantum and gravity not going well together? Because there's a method that we know that works to go from a classical theory to a quantum gravity, or to a quantum theory. And so this works really well for like electromagnetism. This works really, really, really well for the nuclear forces. It's called it's this process called renormalization. And the thing is that's basically an algorithm. You take in an input theory and then you do a process and it'll spit out the quantum theory. The trouble is that it doesn't work for relativity. Like, you can prove that it doesn't work. So yeah, unfortunately, it just, and there's a whole bunch of other deeper issues too, but that's like the fundamental problem. How to find a magnitude of a 3D vector, and why is it kind of the same as a 2D vector? Well, the magnitude of a 3D vector, it sounds like you already know how, but it's the square root of the three components squared. And the reason it's the same is because the Pythagorean theorem applies in all dimensions. You just have to add up the lengths of all of the triangles or the tetrahedrons or whatever. The side lengths. All right, Factor, you're going to be in timeout for 5 minutes because you've been spamming like crazy. Why do cross products only work in 3 and 7 dimensions? That is because of the quaternions and the octonions. Because those are 4 and 8 dimensional respectively. Under what conditions can a conductor have a non-zero internal electric field? I guess if you have a changing magnetic field, right? But that's it. Maybe that's not it. I have to think about it some more. Um, is gravitation weaker during the night because of the moon? Well, the moon's not always on the night side, but if you're asking if so yes, it is true that when the moon is above you, you will weigh slightly less. That's true. How much research do you get to how much research do you do to get your PhD? A thesis worth? So my thesis was like 180 pages, I think. So that much. Um, if I hate experimental physics and find it ugly and tacky looking, can I skip it to learn the theoretical space stuff, or do I need to slog through it? Every physics student will need to do some experimental physics. That's part of getting a degree in physics, and it's good to learn it. Just that way then you know how experimental physicists work and you can appreciate what they do. However, I didn't do any experimental physics after undergrad. Did Einstein reject quantum mechanics? No. He just rejected one of the interpretations of quantum mechanics that's quite popular. How long does it take to get a PhD in physics? Depends on the field, depends on you. It took me 5 years after my master's. What is the hardest academic part of your career been? Finding a job. Like that's the hard part, right? Relationship of the financial market and physics. Well, there are people called econophysicists, but I think that's kind of silly. Thoughts on people like Bob Lazar? He's a hack. He's a hack and a grifter. I don't know if he's still alive, but opinion on the Hubble tension. I want it to be new physics. I want it so badly to be new physics. Damn, bro, you're cooked. How much debt do you have? I have no debt. Do you use category theory for anything? I do not. Will we ever be able to simulate the entire universe to prove it's closed? I suspect not. No. By the way, if you're just joining us, or if you're have been watching for a while on YouTube or on TikTok, make sure to like the live, wherever you're watching from. Like the live so we can get more people, good questions. If this gets sent out to more people will learn about physics. Did I hear right? Your IQ is about 180? No. What? When did I say anything about 180? I have no idea what my IQ is. Do you think spacetime is discrete or continuous? I have no idea. I want to lean towards discrete, but that has its own problems. What jobs can a PhD in theoretical physics even get you? A research position at a university. Where do physicists work? Mostly at universities and in national labs. PhDs are the most unemployed degrees. No, PhDs are not the most unemployed degrees. That's a very silly thing. A very silly claim. Stop ducking Q-top. Bro ducked me last week. Bulbasaur's a hack is just brain rot, jealousy, and hilarious. Well, he was wrong, and he's like a known fraud, right? Like he was a known fraud. We got a Cash App, $1 from Rob. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you. You didn't send a question with it though. What made you fall in love with physics? It was black holes. It was 100%. I saw a picture of black holes on the internet. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm gonna do this forever. Dark Dawkins obliterated Dr. Blitz. Okay. Whatever you need to think to sleep at night, right? Why can you multiply differential coefficients, i.e. dy dx times dx dy equals 1? Yeah, there is a way to prove that mathematically, assuming that they're invertible and, all these lovely things, but basically because it works. Could the sound effect from Mahabharata's war still exist in the universe, preserved through the principles of quantum physics and energy conservation? No, there's no air in space. Brandon Bremont with the $5. Thank you for the $5. No question, just wanted to support what you do here and on TikTok. Appreciate your content. I appreciate that. I study Egyptology and my only possible job is to teach Egyptology. It's literally a pyramid scheme. Well, look, so most physicists who work at universities, their primary job is research. Teaching is kind of a side gig. So, like but that's funny, the pyramid scheme bit. Yeah. When was Lazar discredited? Oh, he fabricated his credentials. Like, there's no evidence that he went to the schools that he says he went to. There's no evidence that he ever had any position besides, like, a janitorial position at, what was it, at, like, it wasn't at NASA, wherever he claimed to work. Like, this is just, like, he's made a whole bunch of claims, and there's no evidence to support any of it. And, like, people have asked the universities, and they're like, oh, yeah, we have no record that this student was ever here. Um, would you ever want to run your own research team? I don't think I'm qualified for that yet. Like I'm still I still feel so young and like not like I don't know enough. Um, the degree did not pay off, bros, on TikTok Live. Well, look, I mean, to be fair, I was doing this during my degree. I was doing this while I was working at a university. I'm still doing this because I think it's useful outreach. Um, but all things considered, when I was under contract, I was making around $75,000 a year, so that's pretty decent. How does collaboration work in research? It could be in person, it could be via email, it can be via Zoom calls. Um, sometimes you'll have two people who come together and they want to work on something and they kind of come up with an idea. Other times you'll have one person who comes up with an idea and they need help, so they'll bring on other people to help them solve the issues. It's that's roughly it. Oops. Why doesn't gravity screen itself like electric charge does? Because gravity is always attractive. Um, did you study hard in high school? Not really, no, but I did get good grades. Um, do you think being a pagan would be fun? I mean, it might be fun, yeah. Lorentz symmetry. Oh, that's not a question. 79K. Well, to be fair, 75K in a low cost of living country. It was actually it was more akin to like 200K, all things considered. In the US, I was in Central Europe, so cost of living was significantly lower. How does photoelectric effect show the photon nature of light, not wave nature, while wave does have energy? What it shows is that light comes in discrete packets, right? Because the point is regardless of how much energy you put in, if the frequency is not high enough, the the individual packets can't contain enough energy. So that's what it shows. It shows that light has a packet nature. A physicist's job is to find physics, not study. Well, I guess, yeah, we do research. That's like the whole job. Yeah. So yeah, the cost of living, like it was like I had a luxury apartment for $1,200 a month. So, make of that what you will. What problems could discrete spacetime have? Well, it violates Lorentz invariance. And so if it violates Lorentz invariance, what that means is that the speed of light isn't actually the same in all cases. It means that you would have vacuum dispersion, which means that different colors of light or different wavelengths of light would travel at different speeds, which is weird. So there's just some issues, and maybe they're not issues, but they are things that we haven't observed experimentally. Do you ever test ChatGPT's intelligence? No. Are you familiar with Eric Weinstein? Any thoughts on his theories? He's a grifter. Do you have a schedule for when you do what kinds of streams? Yes, Tuesday and Wednesday are science streams. Usually Tuesday is peer review and Wednesday is Ask a Physicist, but I didn't find any interesting papers to read today, and I didn't have time to look for them. So we're doing Ask a Physicist today, and hopefully we'll do peer review tomorrow. What was your SAT score? Oh God, I don't even remember. It was like 21 something, I think. But this was back when it was out of 2400. What are your suggestions on getting a PhD in computer science? I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I don't know what the job market's like there. Is it true that there's mathematically no difference between time moving forward or backward? As far as we can tell, yes. Is the supermassive black hole, or better, the singularity itself in the center of our galaxy, physically bigger than smaller than stellar ones, or just more massive? Well, we don't know if singularities exist. If singularities do exist, then they don't really have a size. But the event horizon of the supermassive black hole is significantly bigger. How is quantum entanglement possible outside of theoretical physics? I don't know what you mean by possible, but we can observe it in a laboratory. How does time dilation work? The best answer for this, the most intuitive short answer anyway, is that everything travels through space-time at the same rate. The faster you travel through space, the slower you travel through time. Similarly, when you're near a large gravitational body, that body will stretch how big space and time is. It'll change the size and shape. And so you'll travel through space and time at the same rate, but somebody else will see you traveling at a different rate because the space-time has been stretched. Energy of wave and photon both are HF. No, if it's a wave, it can have an arbitrary energy. That's the point. The photoelectric effect implies that there are packets with energy HF. If it was just like if it was some other kind of wave that wasn't discrete, then you could have an arbitrary amount of energy. Are you familiar with Professor Dave? Yeah, I am. I don't watch his stuff that often, but we've talked about collaborating before. It just never happened. Do you think our universe is inside of a black hole? No, I don't. Is math based on physics or is physics based on math? Both. Least favorite physics class in undergrad? Probably the experimental classes, to be honest. What type of physics do you specialize in? Relativity, anything to do with geometry, any theoretical relativity work is stuff that I like and stuff that I work on. I'd like to work on leading experimental physics such as plasma fusion. Would I have a better chance of getting into that by transitioning to mechanical engineering? No, you'd have a better chance of getting into that by getting a PhD in experimental physics. And by the way, experimental physicists, I don't think are having a hard time finding jobs right now, especially on practical things like plasma fusion. Like, that's going to get huge amounts of funding. So apparently space is now considered a function of time dimensions. This is regarding like the 3 time dimension or something. That's like a brand new paper. It's not like some mainstream consensus thing. I haven't read it yet, so I can't comment, but this is not like some new breakthrough that everybody's suddenly agreeing with. You're so smart, why are you streaming on YouTube and not working for physics? So in the mornings, I do live streams on TikTok and YouTube. And then in the afternoon, I do physics research. That's my schedule this summer. What is supersymmetry? So supersymmetry it's a theoretical idea, and it was I can explain why it was proposed in a minute. But the basic gist is that for every type of particle, well, roughly there's 2 kinds of particles. There's bosons and fermions. Bosons are particles that, in some sense, don't take up space. They can overlap with each other, no problem. These are things like force carriers, like the photon is a boson. And then there's fermions. These are like matter particles. They do take up space. They can't overlap. These are things like electrons and quarks. So the idea of supersymmetry is that for every fermion that you have, it has a boson partner. And for every boson that you have, it has a fermion partner. So supersymmetry, the minimal version of supersymmetry, is that each particle that we know exists, there's twice as many where each one has its own partner. Now, the reason you might suggest that such a thing is true is because if that's the case, it answers a lot of questions. Like a lot of questions about like why is the Higgs VEV, the vacuum expectation value, why is it that value? Why like there's a lot of things that if supersymmetry was true, we would have answers to those questions. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like supersymmetry is true. All right, let's bring up Ethan for a question or two. Ethan, how's it
Hey,
going?
thanks for having me up.
Of course,
Good. How you doing?
I'm okay. What questions you got for me?
Yeah. So I was wondering what your thoughts are for. Do you think it's possible for, like, let's say we get to a fundamental underlying theory? Can that include renormalization, or is renormalization a sign that you are not at the fundamental
Good
bottom?
question. I'd really like it. So in some sense, it shouldn't. It shouldn't have renormalization. But what it could have is it could have unexpected counter terms, or unexpected terms that you might call counter terms, but are still fixed for whatever reason. If you do have to do this business of, yeah, so what could happen is that, suppose that you had a fundamental theory of physics that was a quantum field theory, and it just happened to be that it had terms that you would traditionally think of classically, and then it also had other terms. Now, I think, and it would be the case in this theory that, you know, if you left out some of the terms, you get infinities. I think that that's not an issue. What's an issue is that the counter terms have to be selected in a way that basically depends on experiment. That is unexpected, given the for like an ultimate theory of something. But if like there were just several terms which, you know, cancel out infinities for whatever reason, then I think that like as long as you don't have to like rely on experiment to like fix the coefficients in these terms, then I think that would be fine. That would be totally reasonable to expect in a theory of everything.
Okay, interesting. And I guess it might be like a similar way of asking the same question, but the second part of it was, um, would the same thing apply to point particles? If you're working with point particles, is that a sign that you're not working with something fundamental?
I don't think so. I think in principle you could work with point particles. Um, like it's at least not clear to me that like a fundamental thing has to be non-point like.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, appreciate it. And the last one I had was, and I could totally read the paper on it, but that's what you're here for, right?
But what if I haven't read
How
it?
exactly can spin frame drag?
I'd have to go refresh my memory on the mechanism. You're talking about like fermion spin, or are you talking about like a system with angular momentum?
Fermion spin.
Yeah, I'd have to go read the paper. I don't know that I
Uh,
don't know that off the top of my head. So typically, fermion spin couples to torsion, and there typically is no torsion in GR. But you can do Einstein-Cartan gravity that introduces torsion. Then you can couple spin to the torsion tensor, and now you can, and the torsion tensor can introduce funny behavior as well, which I guess perhaps could lead to frame dragging. But yeah, I don't think that it's supposed to.
so you can't just use GR, you need Cartan.
Well, if you have angular momentum, like macroscopic angular momentum, then you can get frame dragging from angular momentum, no problem. But um, GR doesn't couple to fermions in a way that sees it spin, if I remember correctly. But I could be wrong about that. If you have a reference that I could look at, I can. Yeah. So usually the way that we think about it is that torsion is what couples to point to spin it up or to angular momentum at a point. Um, but yeah,
Interesting.
so I think that you would need Einstein-Cartan or at least something with torsion if you want to talk about fermion spin.
Yeah, I'll take a look at the paper, and I feel like no matter what the
Is
answer
there a
is, yes or
particular
no,
paper
it's
that
going to
you're
make my
referring to?
stomach upset. Yeah, I think it's actually called. Um, I think it's called "Can Spin Does Spin Frame Drag." It's on
Oh, okay.
preprint. I'll have to look it up.
Did it pop
But
up
that
recently?
yeah, that's all I had today. Thanks for what's that?
Did it pop up recently?
Um, I don't think it's like a recent paper, like in the last year. It came up on a discussion thread, and it's probably like a few years old at
Oh,
this
okay.
point.
Okay, yeah, look it up. I'd be happy to know. I'd be delighted to know what the answer is. I haven't read it, so yeah, let me know what you find.
All right, thanks, dude. Have a good one.
Take care. All right, let's get back to answering some questions. By the way, I do have a meeting in about 45 minutes, so we only have 45 minutes left, but that should be plenty of time. Is Lagrangian useful? Yes. Don't spam. This guy has no clue what he's talking about. Oh, well, glad to know. I love that more people question renormalization. Um, I don't know. I think renormalization gets a bad rap. Can you explain microcanonical ensemble? Oh god, I hated StatMech. No, I'm not going to explain it because that means I would have to go open up my StatMech book and remind myself what the grand canonical ensemble is and the microcanonical ensemble is and all this business. I hate it. I hate it so much. From Cats and Pokemon with the $2. What's on the cutting edge of physics? Anything fun? Oh, there's so much. Like there's not like I can't know everything that's on the cutting edge of physics, but like there's notions like celestial holography, which is really hot right now. It's kind of like this notion. It's this notion of like the holographic principle, but as applied to like a universe like ours rather than a universe that's not like ours. A lot of papers on that. That's really hot. There's a lot of stuff on black hole stability that have been coming out recently. Peter Hintz has gotten quite famous as a result of his work on black hole stability in the last 10 years or so. There's the recent DESI data has increased people's interest in various alternative models on dark energy. So yeah, there's a lot going on. But to be clear, there's a lot going on in field beyond my own. Those are just the things that are like tangentially related to my field, so I know about them. Is black hole a solid sphere? No, it's not. Oh, you gotta pay to get an answer, but if you question him, he mentions your comment. No, it's just if you do a super chat, I will read your question first because of course I will. Don't be silly. Is particle spin just an analogy? It's not an analogy. It's just a name. Particle spin is just the name for intrinsic angular momentum. Hold on. Oh. Unfortunately, y'all, I gotta end the live. I need to go work something out. Something just came up. Sorry for cutting it so short so early. And not answering as many questions as I would have liked to. Thanks all for being here. Have a good one.